What if the thing haunting your home wasn't a ghost, but a person already living inside your walls? These are real stories of children stalked, mothers watched, and strangers found wedged in chimneys. From baby monitors catching unthinkable horrors to sketches of you asleep, drawn by someone who shouldn't exist, this video will shatter your trust in the place you think is safest. Watch until the first time Gregory Lawrence felt truly afraid in his own home was not during a thunderstorm or while watching a horror movie, but on an otherwise quiet Thursday evening in May, when the silence was broken not by a creak or a bang, but by the slow, deliberate sound of someone breathing right behind his bedroom wall. He had just moved into the historic home in Charleston, South Carolina, a place he'd bought for its charm and character. It had been built in 1894 and still had its original floorboards, crown molding, and apparently secrets. Gregory Lawrence didn't believe in ghosts. Not then. He'd heard strange sounds, drafts through the walls, floorboards shifting, but nothing unusual for an old home. But this breathing was different. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't the wind. It had rhythm. Inhale, pause, exhale. Too controlled to be an accident. He pressed his ear against the cold plaster, holding his breath. And it continued, so close it felt like it was inside the wall. He tore that wall open the next day, hammered and pulled until the wooden slats cracked like bones. He didn't find a person, but he found something worse. A sleeping bag, fast food wrappers, a broken cell phone, and a notebook full of drawings of Gregory Lawrence asleep in bed, each sketch more recent than the last. No forced entry, no broken windows. That meant the intruder had keys or had never left. The police were baffled. There was no sign of anyone in or around the house. But Gregory Lawrence never slept in that bedroom again. In fact, he didn't stay another night. He packed a bag and fled to a hotel. When he returned days later, accompanied by officers for a second check, they found something new tucked under the mattress. A used toothbrush, warm water in a mug, and a receipt from the gas station 2 blocks away, timestamped just 3 hours earlier. Across the country in Oregon, a single mother named Meredith Jacobs was adjusting to life in a new apartment complex with her 2 young daughters, Savannah and Mia. They had moved to escape Meredith Jacobs' ex-husband, a man with a long history of violence and manipulation. She thought she'd done everything right. New locks, no forwarding address, a new number. For months, things were quiet, until Savannah began talking about the man with the green eyes in the hallway. At first, Meredith Jacobs thought it was an imaginary friend. But then Savannah described what the man wore: muddy work boots and a blue hoodie, and how he always watched from the dark end of the hallway when Mom was asleep. That was a detail Meredith Jacobs could not ignore, because just the week before, she'd found a strange muddy footprint near the back door, a door that she always locked but which had seemed a little loose recently. She set up a baby monitor, not for the children, but for the hallway. The first 2 nights, nothing. On the 3rd night, there he was, a man with hollow cheeks and glassy eyes walking slowly down the hallway at 2:13 a.m., pausing right outside her bedroom. Then he backed away and disappeared from frame. The police arrived and swept the apartment but found no one. Every window was locked, every door secured. But that same night, when they checked the crawl space that led to the attic, they found used food containers, cigarette butts, and most terrifying of all, dozens of photos of Meredith Jacobs and her daughters taken from inside the house. She hadn't seen the man since, but she never felt safe again, and she didn't stay. That apartment went vacant for 2 years. The landlord refused to rent it. Even now, neighbors say you can hear footsteps in the hallway late at night. In 1997, a college student named Brandon Ellis rented a room in a shared house near his university campus in Minneapolis. The house had 5 bedrooms and a basement that had been sealed shut long ago, after flooding damaged the foundation. No one used it. There was no way in or out, or so they thought. It started with the light bulbs. One by one, they began disappearing. Not breaking, not burning out, just gone. Then things went missing. Spoons, socks, hairbrushes. The roommates accused each other, joking at first, then serious. They set up a nanny cam in the kitchen just to prove a point. What they saw made them scream. At 3:27 a.m., a man emerged from the basement crawl space. He was naked except for a burlap sack around his waist. He walked straight to the fridge, took a carton of milk, drank from it, and then vanished again into the shadows. They called the police. They tore open the crawl space, and behind it they found a chamber. It was like a tomb. Candles, old food, and tally marks scratched into the walls. Over 200. They never found out who he was. DNA didn't match any local records. He had no ID, no known address. He was committed to a psychiatric facility under the name John Doe 143. But when Brandon Ellis moved out a week later, he left behind everything except a single note on the floor. He watched us longer than we'll ever know. Not all horrors begin at night. Sometimes they begin with a smile. Like when 18-year-old Haley Pierce took a job babysitting for a wealthy family in upstate New York. The family had one child, a quiet boy named Oliver who rarely spoke but liked to draw. On her second night, Haley Pierce noticed the house had an unusual amount of mirrors, dozens on nearly every wall. The parents told her it was just decor, nothing to worry about. But on her third night, when she put Oliver to bed, he handed her a drawing. A sketch of Haley Pierce sitting on the couch, with red eyes watching her from the mirror behind her. She asked him, "Is that me?" And he nodded. She asked, "What are those?" And he simply whispered, "The Watchers." That night, she sat on the couch alone and decided to test it. She turned off all the lights, lit a candle, and watched the mirror. At 12:03 a.m., something moved. Behind her, she whipped around, nothing. But in the mirror, there was a silhouette, a tall figure with eyes that glowed like coals. She turned the lights back on and the image vanished. When the parents returned home, she tried to explain, but they brushed it off. They said Oliver had an active imagination, and she was letting it get to her. Haley Pierce never went back. A few months later, the house was condemned after a fire broke out in the attic. Investigators found a hidden room with floor-to-ceiling mirrors and a dusty chair in the center. No one knows why it was built or who sat there. Sometimes you are home. Sometimes you lock every door, check every window, and you still don't see it coming. That's what happened to Diane Matthews, a retired librarian living alone in her cottage in Vermont. She kept to herself, had no enemies, and lived a peaceful life. Until one morning, when her neighbor noticed Diane Matthews's mail had been piling up. The garden looked untended. The lights were always off. When police entered the house, they found no signs of struggle. No forced entry, no blood, but Diane Matthews was gone. They searched the area, combed the woods, issued missing person flyers. Nothing. Until a week later, a delivery man came to drop off a package and noticed something strange. A foul smell coming from the chimney. Inside the flue, twisted like a pretzel and wedged between bricks, was the body of a man. Naked, filthy, and dead. Autopsy reports said he had been there at least 5 days. They didn't know who he was, but in his hand, clenched so tightly they had to break his fingers to pry it open, was Diane Matthews's necklace. Her body was never found. The man had no connection to her, no history of violence, no motive, just a necklace, a corpse, and the undeniable truth that sometimes evil doesn't need a reason. And then there was the case of 14-year-old Caleb Johnson in Denver, Colorado. Caleb Johnson was a bright kid, quiet, loved building model airplanes. He shared a room with his younger brother Tyler, who started waking up with scratches on his legs. At first, their parents thought it was bed bugs. They changed the sheets, cleaned everything, fumigated. But the scratches kept coming, and they started to appear on Caleb Johnson too. One night, their mother set up a camera in their bedroom to see if they were scratching themselves in their sleep. The footage showed something else entirely. At 2:11 a.m., the closet door creaked open. A hand reached out, then a second. A small figure, about the size of a child but impossibly thin, crawled out, climbed onto Tyler's bed and sat there watching. Then it reached out and touched his leg with one long, bony finger. The family fled the house that night. Authorities later found a hidden passage behind the closet leading to a space between the walls. Inside were blankets, children's toys, and torn photographs of Caleb Johnson and his brother. Photos the family never remembered taking. Whoever had lived inside those walls had been watching the boys for months. These stories are not about ghosts. They're not urban legends. They are truths wrapped in terror, stitched together by the places we think are safe. The homes we build to keep the world out. The locks we trust. The routines we follow. Evil doesn't knock. It doesn't break the door down. It waits. It watches. And then it steps inside. You'll never feel safe here again. Would you stay in your house after hearing breathing behind the walls? Or finding drawings of yourself asleep? Do you check your attic? Your crawl space? Your closet? Which story disturbed you the most? And do you think these were cases of mental illness, hidden intruders, or something even worse? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're still brave enough to sleep tonight, make sure you subscribe, because next time the story might be about your home.